Writing music can be a long and exhausting process, and it can be easy to lose that spark of creativity. I often find I get a bit of a spark, a rush of energy, and once I've set up all the instruments in the DAW and routed them to reverbs and delays and applied all the effects, that spark, that rush of energy is just gone. I'm currently reading producer Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Right at the beginning of the book, he describes this spark as a kind of signal that artists like us are always trying to tune into. He asks, how can we pick up on a signal that can neither be heard nor defined? Well, the answer is not to look for it. Instead, he says, we create an open space that allows it. Now, of course, some of this may come across as slightly la-di-da or spiritual, but I think this is a solid piece of advice, and there are plenty of more specific, practical ways that we can create this open space that allows the signal to resonate, the spark to arise. The first, creating a simple template, a canvas and a palette for your work. In this video, I'll be showing you how you can create your first basic template with your go-to instrument patches and reverbs, etc., all routed, making the composing and mixing process much more efficient, with room, of course, for a bit of experimentation and creativity. Welcome to the second episode of Back to Basics. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's head straight into the door to have a look at my very, very basic template. If you'd like to skip ahead to how to create one, the time will be up on screen now. So this is my main template for very, very basic sort of experimental composition. Experimentation section, this playing around section up the top here, these duplicates and the piano sketches, which I'll explain what they are in a second. You have this middle gap, which doesn't really explain anything. And then down here, you have a piano main, some strings, some reverbs, an echo, and the music out. And if we go into the mixer window, you'll see that most of the instruments are already routed to a couple reverbs and an echo. This first reverb is a hall reverb, just from FabFilter Pro R. It's the Concert Hall Vienna default. And then this second reverb is the same thing, with just a bit of a longer tail, which I like to use sometimes. And then the echo is just a basic Logic echo, tempo synced with 25% feedback. At the end as well, you have some of the things we might need to give the piece of music a quick master, which I like to do sometimes. And on every instrument, you have the EQ and gain already on there. So you're able to not have to load it in every time. And yeah, it's just so much easier. You can just pull it up. I've got a couple shortcuts set to just bring up the EQ and gain very quickly, Z and X on my keyboard. So let me explain what these sections are. Up top here, we have the sort of loading in section and experimentation section. So you have the piano sketch, so that you're able to just basically sketch out some things, perhaps a bit of a chord sequence or something, just play around with some of that. Then below the piano sketches, we have everything I might need to play around with all of the sounds that I have. So Contact, the Sign Player, Opus from East West, BBC SO from Spitfire, and then a few other smaller libraries that I might use. Down here as well, we just have an audio track if I want to sort of record something in really quickly, and then my micro brute set up, which is the synth behind me. So what I'm able to do is just drag this into the sort of experimentation section down here. It duplicates it, and then I can set up, whatever I need. If it could be this electric keys from Fracture Sounds, and then it's there, and I can play around with sounds. I can just, sort of get it going, get something together. And then once I've got something, I can drag it into this sort of main section down here where we're sort of actually creating the music. The piano main is the piano that I tend to use pretty much all the time. It's Spotlight Piano from Fracture Sounds, and it's just sort of already set up for me the sounds that I like, so that I'm able to just go in and play basically. And then the strings are the strings that I always tend to use. First of all, we have this ensemble patch from this Flortando ensemble patch from Chamber Strings from Spitfire Audio, and it sounds a little like this. We then also have the chamber strings that I use, the individual patches, the violins, viola, cello, and bass. I use that for a sort of wide orchestral sound. I use this library, and then I use Orchestral Tools' Pteris Vash strings for a more intimate sort of sound. I really, really love this library. Yeah, so this is my very, very basic template. I'm now going to show you how you can set one up yourself to make your life so much easier when composing. Right, so the first thing that I think we need to do once we've loaded up our DAW is just go in and possibly list some of the things in the notes section. You can bring up the notes in your DAW, you can just get a pen and paper. List all the things that you always use. Let's say you always use these three things. You use a piano, you use a specific synth, and you always use a string quartet. Right, we've got those three things. So those are going to be the first things that we're going to put into our template. Right, piano. Let's load in our piano. For me, it's Spotlight Piano by Fracture Sounds, as I mentioned before. Brilliant. So we've got our piano in. Let's just call this piano main. This is our first instrument in our template. So that means that we can start on sort of the sends and that sort of thing, where we're going to route things to. So you might have it set to stereo out, but I sort of automatically have it set to routed to bus 250, which let's just call this music out. And on there, we're going to put everything that we might need for mastering, and then we're going to deactivate the plugin. So this is everything I might use when I'm mastering. Brilliant. So we've got the piano, we've got it routed to bus 250, and then bus 250 goes out to the stereo out. Bus 250 is called music out. So let's go to our sends. We want to set up some reverbs. Let's go bus 65. This brings up bus 65, and let's call this reverb 1. And let's add in our reverb to this this track. Let's say we always use Concert Hall Vienna. Obviously, you can use any reverb you want. Even the Logic reverbs are really, really good. So yeah, don't worry about if you don't have this sort of fancy plugin stuff. You don't need it. You don't necessarily need it. Right, so we've got our first reverb set up. Let's say we want to do another reverb 2 this time. It's going to be the same thing. Let's bring up our mixer window, Let's just duplicate that, and then let's say we just want maybe a plate reverb for this. I like to use this gold plate and I'll whack up the sort of tail a little bit. There we go. So we've got our plate reverb and our hall reverb. Let's just call them what they are, because just so we know going forward. Something that I like to do, which you don't have to do, is I route this to another bus, which I call the rear bus, which should just adds a bit of mid-side compression to the reverbs. You can just do it with, let's just say for now, mid-side power. Let's just use this preset for now. Brilliant. So we've got our music out, we've got our reverbs, and we've got our rear bus. Brilliant. Obviously, you can route any effects that you need to. Yeah, through this, you can use any effects, and then all of those should be going into the music out. Not these. Okay, those are going to the rear bus. Once again, everything needs to be stereo panned. And then what I like to do is just go into the mixer window and just create a track for all of these so that they're sort of in the main session window. So let's head back to our main instrument, the piano, and we want to always have EQ and gain always set up on the sort of instrument insert, so that we're able to just duplicate that so that every instrument has that set up already. So let's add some EQ. All you have to do is add the plugin on. I have it set to this one, and then gain down here means that we're able to just do some good gain matching. Lovely. So our first instrument was piano. Our next is a synth. Let's say we always use a synth. Let's just duplicate that so that all the settings are there. Take this off, and let's say we always use a tape synth plugin. So Spitfire Audio, tape synths. I think this is a brilliant library. I love it and I use it a lot. Let's say we always use that synth. It'd be pretty niche music to always use that synth, but you know, it makes sense. It's a really lovely sound. And then let's just call this tape synth 1, or like tape synth main. Right, we've got that, and then we always use a string quartet. So this synth is already routed to all of those things. So let's just duplicate that track again. Let's say we always use the sine player, and we always use Terrace Fast Strings. Orchestral tools, sine player. Yeah, we always use Terrace Fast Strings, and we always use the first chairs of every, instrument in the string quartet. Cool. So let's say OT, Terrace Fast Strings, PVS, violin 1. Just duplicate that. And then let's load up some violas. I missed the violas. Sorry, viola players. Now, let's list some of the things that we might use when we're experimenting. So let's say you might use those things. So what do we need to have loaded in for this? We need to have contact available. We need to have sine available. We need to have BBC SO player available. Labs, spec mems, and carbon. So we need to load in some patches with those 6 and call them duplicate, so that we're able to duplicate them when we're composing. So let's just duplicate this for now, and let's go to contact 7, and let's just make it a blank instance of contact. Brill, that's loaded in. Contact duplicate. Right, do the same thing. And what was our next one? Sign player. Sign. And we call this sign duplicate. So that we have these readily available, routed through what we might want them routed through. Player, the BBCSO player. BBCSO duplicate. Labs duplicate. Now, we might also want a piano sketch thing if we like doing that, if we like working that way. And we want to use a different piano to our main piano. Maybe one that cuts through a little bit. One that I think cuts through quite nicely is this Media Toolkit piano. And then we can call that the piano sketches. Brilliant. So now it's just about putting the things onto your template that you might end up using. So showing the on-off signs on the on-off icon, maybe hiding the icons on the tracks because I don't really like them. And then up here, you want to sort of maybe customize the control bar a little bit. So you want customize. You might want to put in capture recording, which is really useful. So let's put that in there. Also, as well, you might want to put in some markers with a pre-roll. So let's say music start. You can give it a little color. Let's give it green. Green, so we know music starts on green, and then a marker here for pre-roll. Yeah, and again, let's make that red. So no music should be in this section. Close this little bit here. Maybe we can start the tempo here so that we can alter it thereafter. And then here's another trick that I like to do to sort of separate the sections and separate the stacks is if you just duplicate any track, you go reassign track, no output. Click on it to rename it. Double space, enter. You've got a blank track to sort of separate the sections, and then you can just use this to separate what you want. Just duplicate it yet again. You want to separate these, the synth from the other stuff, those strings from everything else. You want to separate the reverb from the rear bus and the rear bus from the output track. Boom, everything's separated really nicely. You've got your piano sketches up the top so you can play around there. You've got anything you might need to use to duplicate. You've got everything here that you definitely do use. And then you can maybe just create a bit of a section in the middle. Again, by duplicating those no output tracks. And perhaps just using, a dotted line to separate these. Just duplicate that dotted line. And then let's put some no output tracks in the middle so that if we need to, we can duplicate something here and just drag it into this sort of experimentation section down here. Excellent. So that is our very, very basic sort of first template. You then, to save it as a template, which is really the most important part, you have to come up here to File, Save as Template, and then name it what you want. So let's call it Very Basic First Template. I hope that was really helpful for you. Thanks for tuning in to this second episode of Back to Basics.
I'm just going to jump in very quickly and say, we're talking about making this into a two-parter, and the second part would be talking about, or actually showing the template that Archie's got there being used for real, starting off some kind of sketching and some kind of process, how he would actually use that in practice. And I think that would be really useful. But let us know in the comments if that's something you'd like us to put together, or indeed if there's something else you'd like us to put together. Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, we'll do our best to give you what you want, to give you what you need. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great evening. Bye for now.
We've got plenty more coming, so Remember to like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified when we release more like this on the YouTube channel. As well as that, head over to our website, theqtube.com/library, to get access to all of our incredible unscored clips for as little as £1 a month. £1 a month for all of the clips in our library. I think that's a bit of a bargain. If you are thinking of upgrading your membership, remember £5 a month gets you access to the walkthrough demo of each clip that I do, writing a score for each clip that is released on the YouTube library. So you can see my walkthrough demo, how I wrote the music. You take a bit of a look into my Logic session and how I arrange things and things like that, which I think can be really helpful. And then finally, £10 a month gets you feedback on a piece of your choosing from me once a month, as well as all the Logic files, audio stems, MIDI files, and an AAF file of each walkthrough demo that I do for each clip that is released on the library. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.